very lively discussion afterwards. We learned a lot from each other, and I'm hoping that it'll be the same today. I'm going to pull up my slides and share them. Oh, 1 second. Can you guys see my screen now? Okay, good. All right. Can you guys also see the video of everybody? I'm trying to figure out how to, okay, it's gone now. All right, so thank you again, Mrs. Jackson, for inviting me back to talk about this topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is about family knowledge and how powerful it is. I also want to thank Tiffany Carter. She's going to speak as well. I invited her to be part of this with me because of her expertise. She's currently seeing many patients in a busy clinic in Houston, Texas, and she'll tell you, you guys will hear more about her during her introduction. Tiffany and I met at Howard University while she was in training, and I was working as a genetic counselor there. And I've just been very blessed and fortunate throughout my career to be involved with organizations like Howard University and like the Sisters Network, who really pride themselves in putting together events like this so that we can all share our knowledge and talk about important issues that affect the African-American community. So all throughout my slides, there are pictures from the Sister Network's website because they're all just very visually nice. I really like this picture. It's a picture of breast cancer survivors who are part of the network celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Sisters Network. And I see you guys are waving napkins in the air. So maybe later during the Q&A, you guys will tell me what's going on here because I'm curious. So for breast cancer risk factors, we're gonna start off with the basics. It's probably gonna be reviewed for you guys. So breast cancer risk factors include things that we can't change for the most part, such as getting older, being women, and then also some other factors such as reproductive history. So we know that women who have their first period under age 12, their risk for breast cancer is somewhat elevated, as well as women who go through menopause, so stop having their periods after age 50. That could be a risk factor as well, including having dense breast tissue. And we're going to focus on family history of breast cancer, because along with getting older and being a woman, family and history of breast cancer is a very strong factor. And so that's why we want to think through and talk about ways that we can be more open and share our health history with our relatives. So our family knowledge is a chapter in our story, our personal stories about who we are, where we come from, the places that we've lived, the places that we've traveled, but also, you know, it would be really lucky if none of us develop diseases, but along our lives, it's extremely common to develop chronic diseases like diabetes, and then also common to develop cancer. You know, cancer is an extremely common disease overall. And when it comes to breast cancer, it is a very common cancer in women. About 1 in 8 women will develop breast cancer in their lifetime. And again, the most powerful indicator of whether you're gonna develop breast cancer, besides, I'm not sure why that's popping up there, other than gender and age, is your family history. So it's really important to know who in your family has been diagnosed with breast cancer. And if you've been diagnosed with breast cancer, to be willing to share that with your close relatives, especially your sisters and your daughters. This is another picture that I took from the Sisters Network of a beautiful young woman. And when it comes to breast cancer, the average age of diagnosis is 60 years old. But we know that people get diagnosed with breast cancer younger than that, in their 30s and 40s even, and older than that. So representation matters. And so It's really commendable that the Sisters Network has women of all ages on their website represented, because if we are just saying, older white women represented in the news and in media, we may think that the disease isn't impacting us, but it is indeed impacting us, and it is impacting, and it can be diagnosed in young women. And when it comes to young women developing breast cancer, we know that that is a risk factor for having what we call a mutation. We also call it a pathogenic variant, having something in our biological makeup that makes us at higher risk to have breast cancer. And the two genes that you've probably heard about before are called Brca1 and Brca2. We talk a lot about those two genes. They're genes that we all have. The issue is if the gene doesn't work properly, if it has a mutation, that puts you at higher risk for developing breast cancer. And being young when you're diagnosed in your 30s and 40s is one indication, one sort of red flag for being at risk for the BRCA1 and 2 gene mutations, but it's not the only factor. And BRCA1 and 2 are not the only genes related to hereditary breast cancer. So we're going to talk more about that, and Tiffany will as well. So when it comes to knowing your family history, you're an integral part of your family. So it starts with you, knowing yourself, knowing what diseases you have, documenting it, and understanding the nuances of the types of diseases that you have. Because when it comes to breast cancer, there's several different types of breast cancer. Breast cancer is an umbrella term for various different types of breast cancer. You guys probably know that ductal breast cancer is the most common type. And this is just like a cartoon picture of what our breasts look like on the inside. So this is the muscle wall. These are fatty tissues here. And then in purple here, and the colors don't really represent how everything looks inside. But if you take the purple part and look at it closer, you'll see that at the top here are what we call lobules. And lobules are the milk producing glands that are in our breast. And then you see these ducts here, that's where the milk comes out. And again, this is a cross section of the duct. So the majority of breast cancers form within the duct of the breast, and it's called ductal breast cancer. And our breast cancer cells, they can have receptors on them. You've probably heard of the estrogen receptors, the progesterone receptors, and HER2. So it's important to know if you have those receptors or not. ER positive, PR positive, ER stands for estrogen receptor, PR for progesterone receptor. The most common types of breast cancer are ER positive and PR positive and HER2 negative. That's what we call like garden variety breast cancer, meaning it's the most common. And that most common type of breast cancer can be associated with hereditary factors. The key point I hope that we get across today is if you get diagnosed with breast cancer, you're the only one that you know of in your family with breast cancer. It could be the most common type of breast cancer. But once you're diagnosed, it then means that your close relatives, like your sisters, if you have them, and your daughters, have a higher than average risk for breast cancer. And that's very powerful information that they can use and take to their doctors to find out, should they be getting mammograms before age 40? Should they get any other type of imaging like breast MRI? So if we talk a little bit more about the different types of breast cancer, we've already kind of established what's the most common type, but there's also triple negative breast cancer where all of those receptors are negative. And we know that triple negative breast cancer is more likely to be associated with BRCA1. Overall, these gene mutations are extremely rare, but I just want you to have the knowledge that if you have this particular type of cancer, it's an indication for you to ask questions and seek out genetic counseling and testing if it's appropriate for you. Triple positive breast cancer is related to a gene called TP53. Then lobular breast cancer. So most breast cancers are ductal, about 80%, 20% are lobular breast cancers. So if you have a lobular breast cancer, your risk is higher to have a mutation in a gene called CDH1, which Tiffany's going to talk a little bit more about in her talk. Men can get breast cancer. I'm sure you all know that. If a man gets breast cancer, that's linked to mutations in the Brca2 gene. Overall, if you develop breast cancer in both breasts, diagnosed at the same time or having one, and then 20 years later diagnosed in the other breast, bilateral breast cancer is associated with almost all of the gene mutations that are linked to breast cancer, and as well as early onset breast cancer. So the take-home message here is to get a copy of your pathology report. Anyone on the call who has breast cancer, if you don't already have your pathology report, you should obtain it. You should review it with your doctors if you already haven't, to know what type that you have. And it's also something that you should keep a copy of, in a file at home, but also, scanning it in, getting an electronic copy of it as well. Because oftentimes, if you do have a genetic referral and you meet with a genetic counselor, they're going to want to see your pathology report. So what's going on with you is important in your family history information. So let's talk more about other cancers that we see in families when there could be some hereditary factors. Often people just think about their family history of breast cancer. Is there another woman with breast cancer in my family? And that is important for sure. But there's other cancers related to breast cancer that could indicate a hereditary factor. So we all know the ribbon for breast cancer is pink, because breast cancer gets so much attention because of, just how much breast cancer patients advocate for themselves. But when it comes to ovarian cancer, you may or may not know that their ribbon is teal. Breast and ovarian cancer gets linked together a lot because of the Brca1 and 2 genes. But again, there's other genes that we're going to talk about as well. Prostate cancer, we're learning more that what's going on with the men in the family, it matters too. We're all interconnected. And so men, when they have prostate cancer plus a family history of breast cancer, it could be an indication that there's a hereditary factor, especially if the prostate cancer is an advanced, aggressive prostate cancer. And then I'm just going to go through here just so that you know all of the different cancers that are linked to breast cancer. We have pancreatic, sarcoma, stomach, colon cancer, thyroid cancer, uterine cancer, melanoma. We don't like to think about children getting cancer, but there are certain childhood cancers like adrenocortical cancer that's linked to that gene that I mentioned before, the TP53, kidney cancer, and leukemia. So when you're gathering and asking questions about cancers in your family, don't just focus on breast cancer. You want to document all the cancers that are in your family and make sure your doctors know that. Oftentimes, we have to fill out those family history forms whenever we go to the doctor. They will just ask about breast cancer and ovarian cancer in the family. And, I have other cancers in my family, so I have to make sure to write them in and let the doctors know, like, you should be asking about all types of cancer. So, we advocate for ourselves, and we sometimes are in the position to educate our healthcare providers too. So when you're finding out about your family health history, what information is needed when it comes to information overall? You want to make sure to get the information from your mother's side and your father's side. I can't tell you how many women have come to me with a strong family history of breast cancer on their father's side, and they were told for years that it didn't matter, but it does matter. Your family history of diseases, your family history of cancer on either side is very important. And you want to collect information on your first degree relatives, which are your parents, siblings, and children, your second degree relatives, which are aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, grandparents, and grandchildren, and your third degree relatives, which are cousins, great aunts, and great uncles. And what do you need to know? You need to know their current age, if they've passed away, the age that they passed away, the cause of their death, other illnesses in the family, just anything that required repeat visits to the doctors using medication or hospital stays. So for instance, diabetes, heart disease, and of course, cancer. And when it comes to cancer, what do you want to know about that diagnosis? You want to know the type of cancer. Was it breast cancer? Was it ovarian? You want to know the age of diagnosis. Sometimes people in the family may know that there was a distant relative that had cancer, but they don't know what kind. If you ask, what type of surgery did they have? And they say, oh, I think they got part of their colon removed. That could be like a key, a kind of a clue that perhaps it was a colon cancer. So any information that you can obtain. Bilateral cancers are important, as well as if a relative had one or more cancers. And this is a pedigree. So if you've met with a genetic counselor before, you've had a pedigree drawn out. It's very likely that you have. It's just a visual tool for us to connect people and relationships in the family. So this is the patient, circles are females, her brother, squares are males, her sister, her children, her parents, and you can see the other relatives that are represented. So you don't have to draw the pedigree when you do and collect your family history. You can do it on, piece of paper, a pen, old-fashioned way, making a table, writing out all of the information you want to obtain from your relatives. The thing about it, if you have a hard copy, just on a piece of paper, you want to make sure to scan it in, put it on your computer, save it on some type of external drive as well, because this is very important, powerful information that we want to pass on to the next generation. So we don't want to lose it. We want it to be saved in various sources. So Mrs. Jackson, she really wanted to make sure that I showed you guys different electronic tools. Using all of these different apps and websites isn't for everyone, but I know Mrs. Jackson really wants her membership to be aware of some of these online tools that are available for family history. The one that's most user-friendly is called the My Family Health Portrait. It was a tool created in 2004 by Dr. Carmona. He was the Surgeon General at the time, and he wanted to help people organize their family history information. The website for the tool is right up here. However, if you just did a Google search for Surgeon General family history, it comes up. It allows you to document all of your family history information. So what you would do, you would just click on this button right here to create a family history. You can also save your information. So some people get nervous and worried when their information is online, and I understand because things get hacked all the time, but they never save the information on their servers or on the website. When you save the information, you have to save it to your computer, or you have to save it to some type of external thumb drive or some external hard drive that you have. So just to show you how simple it is to enter all this information, for your name, you could use your actual name. I use the name that represents us. I just put that we're gorgeous. You put your female, you put your date of birth. And then there's other information. These top three pieces of information they have the red star because they're required. But I didn't put the rest of the information, but I encourage you to put it in here if you do use this tool. Then there's drop downs for you to add your particular disease or condition and the age of diagnosis. They have age ranges here. They want to know your ethnicity because they know certain diseases are more common in certain groups. They will build your family tree for you, and they also do it in a table format. All you have to do is enter in how many brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles that you have. And then if you were to click on the pencil here, it again sends you to that page to enter the information about what diseases your relative has, if they're living or have passed away, and their ages or the age that they've passed away. The tool also calculates your risk for certain diseases. I tried that feature out. It only calculates for diabetes and for colon cancer. I was really surprised it doesn't calculate it for breast cancer. But again, now that you have all this information, you could take it to your doctor. You can self-refer or ask for a referral to a genetic counselor to discuss the information. For unaffected women who have a family history of breast cancer, there are these risk models that'll let them know their risk for cancer and what they should be doing about it. They give you different options for how to save your information here. And again, you would have to be able to save it, not just on your computer, because we know computers crash, but some other type of external method, like a thumb drive. You can then view and print your pedigree or your table, and I'll show you what that looks like. So it'll just draw out this visual pedigree for you based on what you entered about the structure of your family. And then you can print it and have a hard copy. Again, if you have a hard copy, scan it in. You can email it to yourself if you're comfortable with that, or save it. Same for the table. They create a table. Certain diseases they have on here no matter what, like heart disease and stroke and diabetes. But if you list other cancers in your family or other diseases, then the table gets longer. And again, they give you the option to print or to save it. So once you have all that information collected, the call to action, the next step is to talk to your doctor about it, about your family history of cancer. Some people say, I've already had cancer, why do I need to talk about it? The issue is, once you've had cancer, there is a chance, especially if you have a hereditary component, there may be a chance for a second cancer, and we want to prevent that. We want to reduce your risk of developing a second cancer. And then for people who don't have cancer, of course, it's important so that we can do what we can to prevent you from ever getting a cancer. And again, you can also self-refer to a genetic counselor. So, the hashtag Stop the Silence, I know that's something that the Sisters Network has come up with. So if you have thoughts or ideas of how to communicate with your family, because I know some families are different than others, we can talk more about that during the Q&A, sharing ideas. But what you know is what you can document. Some people don't know all of their family history. That's normal to have some gaps in your history, but whatever you can collect is important, and to document it. Make sure to share your cancer diagnosis with your relatives. If you haven't already, think through at least one person that you feel comfortable with in your family, talking to them about it and seeing how that goes. And then just continue to educate and support each other like you're doing now through this network. And I just wanted to end by promoting the virtual 5K walk on Saturday, April 10th, which is focused on stopping the silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Fasaye. That was very informative, and I really like the electronic family history application that we can use. I'm going to actually use it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I don't think enough people know about it, so I was happy to be able to share that tool.
I think we'll make sure that we post it on our web so that folks who want to download them, they can have access to it. But it's very, very user friendly, it looks like.
Yeah, that's a great idea for sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. So we'll make sure we get that from you. Again, thank you so much, ladies who are attending today, watching our pink table talk, Know Your Her Story. We're focusing on knowing your family knowledge, because knowledge is power, as Mrs. Jackson has always said. And then our second half will be how to be your best advocate. But before we, and let me just say again, thank you to Novartis for being our supporter of today's Pink Table Talk, and they were also supported our Pink Table Talk at the end of 2020. So before we go further, I'd like to introduce Tiffany Carter, who is our next presenter. Welcome, Tiffany. Can you take yourself off mute? Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here today. We're very excited to hear some of the information that you're going to share. But before we let you dive into your information, I want to make sure everybody knows all about Tiffany Carter and all the expertise that she's going to bring to you today. Tiffany Carter has been a board certified genetic counselor for more than 13 years. Having worked in a variety of specialties, she has a vast knowledge of genetics and genomics, in addition to valuable experience in the clinical, industrial, and research settings. Tiffany has a particular affinity for cancer genetics. Whether due to positive results, family history, or personal history, she counsels patients and their families with empathy, which is very important, to equip them with the knowledge and understanding about their genetic risk, prevention, screening, interventions, and treatment options that they can greatly impact their decision making. Tiffany received her bachelor's degree in psychology from Henderson State University in Arkansas in 2004, and her master's of science degree in genetics and human genetics from Howard University in Washington, D.C. in 2007. Tiffany has presented at national conferences, supervised and trained genetic counseling students, medical residents, and fellows, written numerous abstracts, and is a published author. She also takes time to mentor prospective studies. She mentors prospective studies who share an interest in the field of genetic counseling. She is a member of the National Society of Genetic Counselors Nominating Committee, Texas Society of Genetic Counselors, and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Tiffany currently manages cancer genetics risk assessment programs in the departments of medical oncology and breast surgery at Houston Methodist Sugar Land and Houston Methodist West in Houston, Texas. She is a woman of faith, a wife, and a mother of two energetic and amazing little boys. Tiffany, thank you for taking time away from your family and your little boys to come and educate our community and Sisters Network. We have a lot of ladies on here today, almost 100 ladies who are taking time out of a Saturday afternoon, putting themselves first. And so we want to share your knowledge with them. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Ms. Allen. Yes, I'm so excited to be here today, and thank you to Grace and to Mrs. Jackson and the Sisters Network for inviting me to speak today. I know it is a busy Saturday, and I certainly love talking with beautiful women like everyone who is here today, strong and wonderful. And I am going to jump right in and continue the talk on family knowledge is power. And I want you to come with me, dream with me. Have you ever dreamed of being wealthy? If not, close your eyes and imagine that right now. Can you see it? Are you in a mansion, on a hill, or surrounded by stacks of money or gold coins? Maybe you imagine being surrounded by your family and friends, which is so difficult right now for many of us. Or maybe your idea of wealth is totally different from any of that. Maybe your wealth is imagining being surrounded by lots of books or gaining lots of information, from knowledge to information and facts. Or maybe you are imagining that you obtained that degree that you worked so hard for, or that you received that certificate for skills that set you apart from others. Now, open your eyes. Would you hide that information or wealth from everyone that you know? Or never allow them to know that you even obtained it at all? That knowledge of possessions or that knowledge of wealth. Well, in genetics, we view family history as very wealthy. And I just wanted to share my slides with you at this time so that you can see them as well. I'm sorry, I have to do that. Let's see. So sorry about that. Okay, here we go. So sorry about that. My slides are up now. So in genetics, we view family health history as very important knowledge that can be passed down as generational wealth. And why is it so important? That's because we share specific traits that come from our parents and from our close family members. And this information can help us create and have an idea of patterns and connect the dots, as Grace showed you, through a pedigree or family history that we take. And there's a proverb that says, a good man or woman leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And that inheritance can be information, or it can be possessions, or hopefully it's both. And so the passing down of this information to subsequent generations is very precious and empowering. And having that foreknowledge to be able to inform others in advance can play a key role in family members' decision-making about screening and prevention. And so there was a consensus statement that was put out by the American Society of Breast Surgeons a couple of years ago, based on a study that was done that showed that women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, and those, they were put into two groups, those who had a family history and those who did not. There was no difference between those two groups when they underwent genetic testing. Their positive results were basically the same. And so based on that, the American Society of Breast Surgeons said that we should be offering genetic testing to all women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, not just those who have a family history of breast cancer or ovarian cancer. And so we are, insurance companies are still adopting this information and working it in, but there are ways that even women who have been diagnosed at later ages should be offered genetic testing to determine if there is a pathogenic variant, as Grace mentioned, or a genetic mutation that may affect their personal risk for additional cancers or a second breast cancer diagnosis, or their family member or their family member's risk. Also, in this consensus statement, the American Society of Breast Surgeons recommended that any woman that has had genetic testing in the past and had it in 2014 or before should be offered update testing. And if it was negative, and so, or uninformative results. And so that's because the panels for the genes that we look at are always changing. We're always discovering new knowledge. And also the technology is also continuing to be updated so that we can detect more of those changes in the gene that can cause the gene not to function the way that we would expect. In addition, if the woman has had genetic testing in the past, then, and there were changes in genes that the lab wasn't quite sure what those changes were doing, they're called variants of uncertain significance, then they recommended that testing be done again, and that those women check in about once a year if to see if there's any new knowledge available about those changes in the gene. Sometimes the lab will what we call reclassify those changes, and they will either let us know that they're leaning more in the benign area, or they're actually positive results that we were not aware of in the past. So we know that healthcare disparities occur in all areas of medicine, and genetics is no exception to that. Chapman and Davis did a study in last year that showed that low-income patients and patients of color are less likely to have a family history taken at their medical visits. They're less likely to receive a genetic counseling referral. They are less likely to be offered genetic testing, and sometimes even less likely to even receive a diagnosis. And so what can you do if you're interested in having genetic testing done and it has not been offered to you in the past, or you want it to be offered again? You want to undergo it now. You weren't ready in the past, but you are interested now. The first thing you can do is request a referral to a genetic counselor, to someone like myself and Grace. And we can sit down with you. We can talk to you about how genes can affect cancer risk. And we can talk to you about how your history, your personal and family history, things that we might be able to do to lower risk. Right now, there are about a little over 5,000 genetic counselors in the country. So we know that it's not enough, or there's an access issue. However, since the pandemic, we have been able to increase telemedicine services and phone services much more rapidly than we would have in the past. And so genetic counselors are a lot more accessible than they used to be. And if you would like to determine if there's a genetic counselor in your area, then you can go to the National Society of Genetic Counselors, nsgc.org, and you can search and determine if there is a counselor in your area, or you can find a telemedicine counselor that you can speak with by phone or by video. The next thing that you can ask for at your appointment is to be specific and ask for an expanded BRCA or Braca panel for testing of at least 9 genes. And this is because prior to that 2014 year, we were really only looking at BRCA1 and or 2. And so since then, we know that there are at least 20 to 25 genes that can increase the risk for breast cancer. And some of them are what we call high-risk genes. Others are more moderate risk genes where the risk is a bit lower. And it has different, what we call penetrance. So everyone in the family might have a slightly different risk factor. And then there are other genes to consider that are more lower risk typically, but it can also increase the risk for breast cancer and other types of cancers. Keep in mind that if there is a family history of other types of cancers, as Grace mentioned, then a larger panel is typically indicated. And so just looking at a small subset of genes may not be the best option to determine the information that we're looking for. And then another option that you have, if you're interested in genetic testing and want to share, have this information obtained through your healthcare provider, is you can print the statement from the American Society of Breast Surgeons. You can search it. The link is also on my previous slide. And you can print it out and take it into your doctors and let them know that you have this knowledge, you know that this consensus statement, new guidelines were issued, and that you may meet the criteria for testing. And at that time, you can show them, and they can figure out how they can get that testing done for you. Most oncologists, breast surgeons, gynecologists, and primary care providers are aware of how to order genetic testing. And sometimes they do need a little bit of guidance on what panels to order, but they can, and the lab can be helpful in that regard as well. The next thing, if none of those options are available, then you can go directly to a laboratory and have the laboratory order the testing for you. It's called direct-to-consumer testing or patient-initiated testing. And there are several labs that will assist in doing genetic counseling, pre-test counseling, where they explain to you what you're going to be tested for. And then they will order the testing for you. It can be done through insurance or out of pocket, and have that process done for you and initiated for you through them instead of through your provider. And your provider can get those results if you allow them to be released to them. All direct-to-consumer testing is not equal though. So I do recommend doing a little bit of research on the best labs to go through. And I'm happy to take any questions about that. The bottom line is refuse to take no for an answer. If you want to have testing done, then it's your provider's responsibility to help you determine how to do that. And sometimes we have to dig in our heels and we just have to make them be accountable. So I'm going to do a case study now for LS. This is a patient that I saw in clinic. LS is a 69-year-old African-American woman. Her last mammogram was in 2014. And in 2016, she started to have some back pain for unknown reasons. She went in for some imaging, had an MRI, and they found a fracture in her spine. And at that time, she had a biopsy. The biopsy came back as showing metastatic invasive ductal carcinoma of the right breast, estrogen positive, progesterone negative, HER2 negative. And she was diagnosed with this in 2017, September. She was referred to genetic counseling in October of 2018. And LS's family history was not striking at all. The only family history that she had was in her father. And you can see that on her pedigree, her father is the green square. He had stomach cancer diagnosed at 60, and he passed away at 61. But there was no other family history that she was aware of on her father's side, although she wasn't very close to her father's side of the family. And she did not have any cancer history on her mother's side of the family. So she did decide to undergo genetic testing, and it was primarily because her daughter really wanted to know this information. Her daughter was very savvy and she wanted to have an idea of whether she was at increased risk be proactive about her health. And so when we did genetic testing for LS, a few weeks later, we received the results back, and they were positive. There was a CDH1 pathogenic variant that was found. And in this gene, there was a part of the gene that the protein was not able to be fully produced. And with this result, LS's closest relatives had a 50% chance of inheriting this CDH1 mutation, pathogenic variant. And so CDH1 is associated with hereditary diffuse gastric cancer and lobular breast cancer. So diffuse gastric cancer risk, which is stomach cancer, when there's a gene mutation in CDH1, it increases the risk up to 83%. So the range is 25% to up to 83% to develop this stomach cancer. And this is likely the stomach cancer that LS's father had. The average age of diagnosis is between 14 and 69. Lobular breast cancer is associated with this gene, although LS did not have lobular breast cancer, but we do know that ductal breast cancer can also be associated at lower amounts. And so lobular breast cancer occurs in the milk ducts. And the increased risk for this breast cancer is between 39 and 55%. And the average age of diagnosis is around 57. There's also potentially an increased risk for colorectal cancer with this gene mutation. And so the consensus guidelines state that the interventions for this particular gene mutation are to remove the stomach between age 18 and 40. And that's because this stomach cancer is very difficult to find at early stages in many individuals. And so it can be in the lining of the stomach instead of like polyps or growths in the stomach. And so it makes it a lot harder to identify it early and on imaging of the in an endoscopy in a procedure. And so when individuals choose not to have surgery, then it's recommended that they have those procedures, that endoscopy, every 6 to 12 months, and that random biopsies are taken of their stomach lining. And it is very difficult surveillance. It's a very difficult surveillance course. With the increased risk for breast cancer, mammograms and breast MRIs are recommended starting at age 30. So that's 10 years earlier than we typically recommend mammograms. And then we add on that breast MRI because lobular cancer is also difficult to identify on a mammogram. And so we can sometimes find it on breast MRI. And then for some of, depending on family history, prophylactic mastectomy or removing the breast before cancer diagnosis may be indicated based on personal and family history. So LS, because her close family members were at increased risk based on this CDH1 mutation, she spoke with them, the ones that she was able to contact, her sister, her brother, her daughter, and her daughter was interested in testing. And so she came in, we talked to her about testing and all the things surrounding undergoing testing for this mutation. And she did have it done, and she came back positive. So she also inherited the CDH1 familial variant. At that time, we referred her, she was age 35. She had not begun her mammograms yet. At that time, we referred her to GI, gastrointestinal doctor, to consult her on how to screen and if she was interested in having surgery, stomach surgery. And then we also referred her to a breast surgeon for mammograms, start her mammograms and her breast MRIs due to the increased risk for breast cancer. And we also know she has a daughter. And so her daughter is also at increased risk, as are LS's other close relatives, sister, brother, and nephews. So in summary, close relatives are at a higher risk. They're up to a 50% chance to inherit these gene mutations. Sharing this information in families gives family members valuable knowledge for decision making. And when there's silence in a family, it means no one benefits from the experiences of what others have gone through. And so it can be a missed opportunity to diagnose early and to surveil early, to have that imaging early, to have the mammograms, whatever is recommended for that gene, because many of these genes, they're expressed in multiple parts of the body. And so we can do imaging in advance to try to diagnose a cancer at the earliest stage possible if something happens. Or we can even have some interventions if a person knows this knowledge in advance. So sharing information really does provide great power to those individuals in a family. And so my call to action is choose faith over fear. Stop the silence and share your truth. And so share your truth is an intentional act. It requires courage because it's uncomfortable. It takes vulnerability. It requires a level of trust, and it empowers and it discloses important information to allow others to make decisions, personal decisions about their health. It's supportive of not just others, but of the individual who holds the knowledge, because it allows other people to be able to support them, to encourage them. And it also allows their family members to have that information to be able to move forward and decide how they will use it. It takes faith and it takes love to be able to be vulnerable and be courageous in a family. Silence your truth. Silence is also an intentional act. And it is a level of control that is not relinquished. It lacks a level of vulnerability. In a family, it can breed distrust, and it can leave others in a state of wondering why. It weakens ties sometimes, and withholding this information can also not allow others to make informed decisions, to make decisions about early intervention and prevention. um, it's unsupportive at a level because it doesn't allow others to be there for you. It doesn't allow others to really understand what is going on and to encourage you and uplift you in a way that many of us need when we're going through difficult situations. And it can also be very painful. It can be very hard for a family and for an individual. So be a trailblazer in your family. Start a new cycle of sharing and share your truth and stop the silence. The last, in conclusion, our takeaway points are that germline testing can be offered to newly diagnosed breast cancer patients as well as survivors. It's not just for individuals who have a family history or have had breast cancer, but it can be offered to even individuals who don't currently have a diagnosis and who are survivors and at any age. Medical management for uninformative results, those negative results or variants of uncertain significance, they should be followed up on. We do recommend testing when there are negative or uninformative results about every 5 years because the technology is always improving and because new genes are always being added to the panels. Cancer risk estimates and management options for breast cancer and susceptibility genes should be, again, offered every 5 years when we don't find anything. And stopping the silence is important to everyone's health in the family, to empower others with the ability to make those decisions that can impact their health in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was a very informative presentation, and you may have to borrow Share Your Truth to go with Stop.
Yeah.
Just give you a heads because it partners very well with our slogan of Stop the Silence, or our hashtag. So thank you again for your presentation.
Okay, put it up.
And just so we do a little housekeeping for everyone, we are listening to the Pink Table Talk, Know Your HERstory. We had just had a presentation on Family Knowledge is Power from Dr. Grace Fasaye and Tiffany Carter. These ladies were dynamic, and we would love for you to take a quick survey so that we can get some feedback on the information that they shared with you. It'll take you a couple of minutes, and we're going to move into the second portion of our presentation. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we thank again our supporter, Novartis, who has made today possible. Our other Pink Table Talk event that we had in 2020 was also supported by Novartis, so we're appreciative of them. So again, the survey is open, the poll, if you would take it while you're listening, we would greatly appreciate it. Just another little housekeeping, I think it's important to acknowledge our Sisters Network team who's going to be helping with the questions after our next two presenters. You'll be hearing from Karen Jackson, who I'll introduce momentarily, but we have Shadala Jackson, who is our program manager, Bridget Holden, who is managing our social media and our Facebook Live of this presentation. And just so that you know, if you want to review this again, it will be up on our YouTube channel at a later date. Tamiko Bird and Bernadette Jackson, excuse me. Okay, Tiffany, can you share the poll? Okay. Again, Tamiko Bird and Bernadette Jackson, who will be taking the questions for our presenters, and so that you can ask questions and have some interaction and get some of those questions answered from all the great information. Hey, Tamiko. And Bernadette, thank you again for always stepping up and helping us out. So without further ado, if you can continue, I see a lot of you starting to participate. We have we're looking for 100% participation. Right now, we're only at about 8 or 9%. So if you folks can take a moment, we really, really value your feedback. It makes us be better and makes us be able to bring great presenters like Tiffany and Dr. Grace to you. So before we move further to the next session, second half of the session is going to be on how to be your best survivor advocate, or best advocate rather. The next presenter is not a stranger to anyone who knows Sisters Network. Her name is Karen Eubanks Jackson. She is the founder and CEO of Sisters Network. She is a 28-year, 4-time breast cancer survivor and a recent author of In the Company of My Sisters, My Story, My Truth, which is her personal memoir of her journey of, fighting the good fight in breast cancer and being a survivor advocate for so many years. Mrs. Jackson is recognized nationally as a true visionary, a national leader in the African American breast cancer movement. Sisters Network is the only national African American breast cancer survivorship organization. Under Mrs. Jackson's leadership, she's led a nationwide effort to focus the spotlight on increasing breast cancer awareness in the African American community. The organization provides many outreach programs like Today and educational programs, survivor and family support through our BCAP, our breast cancer assistance program, which has been very successful. We've helped a lot of people with during COVID. Even with groceries this year, we've expanded it because of the food insecurity that so many survivors are facing, as well as our traditional help in the utilities and rent. Mrs. Jackson has established over 25 survivor-run affiliate chapters around the country. We have many of the ladies on today, and we thank them for being on board today. In 1994, when she founded Sisters Network during her personal fight to survive breast cancer, Mrs. Jackson recognized a lack of sisterhood in traditional organizations, a staggering breast cancer mortality rate for African American women, and limited culturally sensitive material. Jackson's primary motivation was to break through the silence and shame of breast cancer, and I think she's done that, and immobilizes African American women and restricts their ability to receive the support services and interferes with early detection and ultimately affects their survival rates. Jackson has been recognized for her leadership and her advocacy and received many, many awards over the years and recognition, through BET. Her breast cancer was a TV award, Ebony Magazine. She's been selected as JCPenney Champion of Chains. The list goes on and on. A history maker, the Lance Armstrong Voice of Survivorship awardee, and so many more awards. Under Jackson's leadership, Sisters Network has developed numerous national breast cancer outreach initiatives, including hosting the first National African American Breast Cancer Conference, a 10-city conference tour, the annual Stop the Silence National African American Breast Cancer Walk, which will be hosted for the 11th year on April 10th. In fact, we just sent out the flyer today saying registration's open. So if you go to stopthesilencewalk.org, you can register, or you just go to Sisters Network website and the flyer is there. You can click it, it'll take you straight there. But this year, because of COVID, we are doing it virtually. So we're hoping that we still get the same support, because it does benefit our breast cancer assistance program, which continues to allow us to help so many women across the country. In addition, Mrs. Jackson has a program that she developed called Teens for Pink, which is an award-winning program to educate young women about breast health in their family. And there's nothing like coming from the babes in the babies in your family saying, "Mama, have you had your breast examined, or what is our history?" We developed that program to encourage the young girls to know about their body and to know their family history, and to encourage the women that are important in their lives to get their mammograms. A few other programs are the Gift for Life Block Walk, which our chapters implement on a national basis in their various communities, the Pink Ribbon, faith-based Awareness Program, and of course, again, the Breast Cancer Assistance Program. Mrs. Jackson is a highly sought cancer expert who's asked to speak on numerous occasions, and we are just very pleased to always have Mrs. Jackson lending her expertise and keeping us all on our toes in the fight against breast cancer. She is an honorary member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a lifetime member of the NAACP, and a member of the Houston chapter of the Links Incorporated. She is a proud attendee of Morgan State University, and she is married to Kyle Scott Jackson for over 33 years and has a daughter, Colleen, that's me, and two lovely granddaughters. Mrs. Jackson, welcome and thank you. Please make your presentation.
Well, thank you for that great presentation introduction. I'm wondering who that is. So we're going to have the slides, and Shadala will put my slides up so everyone can see them, and we can get back to the take me off. Okay. I'll take. Oops, we went back to someone up to the poll. So we'll have to pull our slides up one more time. So take the poll down. We'll continue to poll after my presentation.
The slide wasn't on.
I know, it's not on. Okay. Well, we're back. This technology, we're getting good at it. Thank you, Colleen, for that kind introduction. And good afternoon to everyone. And to our special shout out to our Sisters Network affiliate chapters joining us today for the Part 2 Pink Table Talk. As the founder of Sisters Network and a presenter today, I feel blessed to be a 28-year breast cancer advocate, and I'm very excited to introduce this guide to you. The Black Breast Cancer Guide. You will hear and learn how to be your own self-advocate with true examples from personal and other survivors' shared experiences. The guide, our breast cancer guide, has 6 steps. So we're going to go through each step. First, how to be your own advocate. Second step, importance of self-advocacy. Knowledge is power. Ask questions. How to make medical decisions and connect with the right groups. Step 1, how to be your own self-advocate. The good news, there has been a shift in the paradigm of survivor-physician relationship. As a longtime survivor, I have been involved and experienced the breast cancer advocacy groups as we fought hard to change the system that we now all enjoy. Being a self-advocate, go back to slide 2. Being a self-advocate does not mean you no longer need help. Keep that in mind. Advocating for yourself as a breast cancer survivor means to take action in your diagnosis and treatment. In our step 2, the importance of self-advocacy. Self-advocacy can literally make the difference between life and death. It is just that serious. Medicine is changing, and the new phrase that is particularly noted is participatory medicine, where survivors are actively working alongside their doctor. Involvement in your medical care gives you a better quality of life and a better outcome as well. It provides options and discovery of new treatment. Step 3, knowledge is power. We all hear this, but it is such a truism. Request a second opinion from your cancer center. Review your reports from with your breast cancer doctor. Join Sisters Network or another organization that can help you understand this journey. Step 4, ask questions, but be prepared before your visit. Bring a friend or a sister to your appointment. And guess what? In today's climate, COVID-19, you're not able to bring anyone. So if you haven't had an appointment this year, you know now that you cannot bring anyone with you. So this is the way we think you can have your best outcome. With your cell phone, put it on speaker, include a person that you trust, either a member of Sisters, a family member, or a friend, so they can be included in your visit to your doctor. That is very permissible. Record your visit to review at a later date. And you can also check the URL. If it ends in gov, org, or education, it will be more reliable to you. Step 6, connecting with the right cancer community matters. So of course, I'm partial to Sisters Network because we are the right community. Okay, step 5, how to make good medical decisions. Well, that's a very good step. It is important to take your time and review your own options before making a decision. Being a self-advocate weighs the pros and cons of your choices. Advocating for yourself, in addition, means to evaluate the benefits, the risk, the costs, and insurance. This process takes into account your personal values, your goals, your priorities for your own decision-making. Step 6, connecting with the right cancer community matters. The cancer community is invaluable sisterhood of resources. Select which one works best for you. The organization can provide options, discovery of new treatments, and help you to find your new normal. We all know about new normal. No matter where you are in your cancer journey, it is good to stay involved and be informed. With that, I'd like to be able to show you a document that that Sisters Network has, which is it is available, and it's Ask Your Doctor, key questions to ask your doctor. It'll take a second to pull that up. The first document, show the first one. Okay, there's the second one there too. So show the first one. Okay. So this we decided to just show just the one that has the tips to that you'll need with your physician. And unfortunately, this is the actual brochure, so it is small print, but it does tell you about your surgical oncology, what questions to ask. It tells you about what questions to ask about your chemotherapy, your radiation, hormonal treatment. So it covers the issues that we all need to know about in order to have a better outcome. And with that said, I would like to say I appreciate all of you being on today, and we can now hear from Carla Bates, and Colleen will give you her bio. Really? Nope. Okay. So. Okay, so I have to be told how much was heard. Did you hear anything?
Yeah, we heard just when you started talking about the brochure, we lost you for a second.
Okay. Well, the brochure that was up is a brochure that we have that tells you about what to ask your doctor. So it's written out. You don't have to show it again, Shus. That stops the volume. So they've seen that. So I'm glad that we have this available. We have been in the movement of self-advocacy for many years, but it is now the new kid on the block. So we can use some of the literature and stuff that we've had all along. So Carla, I know that you have a lot to share, and once you share your story, we'll be open for questions.
All righty.
Well, Carla, let me tell everyone a little bit about Carla Bates. She is one strong woman, and I'm so glad to have her here today to share her story and just give some words of encouragement about how to be a survivor advocate, because she is truly walking in her truth right now. But let's just talk a little bit about Carla Bates. She is a 13-year and 3-time breast cancer survivor, advocate, and author. She also serves as the vice president of the Dallas chapter of Sisters Network. So I'm sure a lot of your members are on today. Your sisters in Dallas watching you and rooting you on. Carla was originally diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in October of 2007 at the age of 34 years old. Bates has become a force in the breast health advocacy area. She has also fought breast cancer in July of 2014 and June of 2019 after metastatic, it metastasized to her spine. After her initial battle with breast cancer, she published her best-selling breast cancer memoir, Dig in Your Heels, The Glamour and Not So Glamorous Life of a Young Breast Cancer Survivor, and has since become a sought-after speaker around the subject of breast health, faith, and overcoming life's obstacles. Her mantra is one life to live, many lives to touch. She is using her voice and experience to touch lives around the world. Carla is an ambassador for the Stanford Cancer Community Partnership Program, the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, Cancer Fighters Organization, the Celebrating Life Foundation, and the St. Vincent and the is it Grenadines? Grenadines? Okay, Grenadines Medical Association in her father's birthplace in the West Indies. Oh, wow. Bates is also a realtor in Dallas, Texas. She earned her bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Washington and a master of international business from Schiller International University in Paris, France. Thank you so much for being here today, Carla, and please share your story.
Yeah, so I am just pleased to be here. Thank you for asking me to be on the panel, Ms. Jackson. And thank you, Colleen, for the nice introduction. Like Colleen said, I'm a 13-year breast cancer survivor, and I have been a self-advocate since I was a child because my mother was a pharmaceutical sales rep for over 20 years. And so she worked with doctors and was very comfortable talking to them, speaking their language and that sort of thing. So anytime I had any kind of ailment, you know, she was right there asking all kinds of questions and, you know, speaking the language, and they're like, oh, okay, well, she understands what we're talking about. So, and then the company she worked for had a really thick manual of every kind of disease known to man. It was the thickest thing. And anytime I got sick, I would go through it and look and kind of self-diagnose before I got to the doctor. So it was something that was usual for me by the time I discovered my lump. And so at the time that I discovered my lump, I had just come back from getting my MBA in Paris. I was living back in Seattle, had just gotten a job, took me a year to find a job, was relocating to the San Francisco Bay Area. So it was the most expensive place in the nation. And it had been a year since I had been looking for a job, so my money was tight. And the company that relocated me there told me that they would reimburse me for the relocation. I couldn't really afford to relocate, so I had to borrow money from my parents just to take the job. So when I got there, I was under a lot of stress. The training was non-existent. I was broke, and just, I thought the little things that I was dealing with at the time were like the worst things ever, until I discovered that I had a lump in my breast. So I was sitting in California, didn't know anyone, was watching TV, and I felt an itch on my breast. Was 34, went to put some cortisone cream on it, and felt a mass underneath. And I was like, what is this? Surprise. I had had a clinical breast exam before I left Seattle. You get all your doctor's appointments, out the way before you leave town. And so I had the clean bill of health. So I didn't know where this mass had come from. I thought it was a cyst because it felt so large. So after I called my mother and was like, hey, I discovered this mass. And she was like, well, maybe did you change your diet? My friend, she gets cysts when she, changes her diet. And sometimes when I was young, I would drink too much caffeine or eat too much chocolate, and I would get sharp pains in my breast. And so she's like, maybe it's your diet. And I thought, well, I'm going to be sure to get this looked at. I'm not going to let anyone tell me that I'm too young, because I had seen some Oprah shows where they had a panel of people that were misdiagnosed or diagnosed late because they told them they didn't fit the demographic. So I said, I'm not 40 years old. They'll probably look at me and say, let's watch this. And I was like, I'm going in, getting a mammogram to figure out what this is. Not going to take no for an answer. So long story short, got into a new patient appointment fairly easily, thank God. And the doctor proceeded to tell me to lie down, and felt around. And he said, I don't feel anything. And it was interesting because I knew he wouldn't feel anything because I never felt anything. When I had done my breast self-exams, you actually had to sit up and squeeze my breast to feel it. And so I told him that, and then he felt it, and he said, I'm going to get you in right away. And I was thankful because his wife had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. So he was a little more sensitive to what was going on in my breast. And so I was glad I didn't have to push and fight and tell him, get me in to get a mammogram. So after I got the mammogram, I kind of, in between the time getting in, had done my research. And like you said, there's certain URLs that will have valuable information. So I know how to sift through Google. I know how to look for information. The chat sites and stuff like that, where everybody's just talking and being scared, those probably aren't the best ones to go to. But like Ms. Jackson said, .gov, reputable .org sites, and the .edu, those sites where there are organizations who study cancer and that sort of thing, cancer organizations. Those are great sites to go to. But by the time I got to the mammogram, I kind of knew what I was looking at. So that kind of made me go in with a different kind of attitude. I kind of just went in with, okay, let's do this, let's get this resolved and everything. And so when I went to have my mammogram, the radiologist, I think, thought she was gonna get me to fall out in the middle of the mammogram or something, because she said, we see something in your breast and it looks very aggressive and you're gonna wanna see a breast surgeon right away, is what she told me. But the doctor said, go through the proper channels of a biopsy and that sort of thing. And so that's when I was diagnosed with stage 3A invasive ductal carcinoma. And then I went through all the aggressive treatment, chemo, radiation, tamoxifen, was cancer-free for 7 years, and then started to have some muscle spasms in my back, and had just left California for Texas. So again, no doctors, not my own doctors. I had to find doctors. And when you have a relationship with your doctor, like previously, if I had any kind of back pain, she would have said, okay, let's get you in and do a PET scan. So now I was facing doctors that knew my history, but didn't know me. And, so they kind of didn't take it seriously. I went to an orthopedic doctor and was like, hey, I'm having these muscle spasms. And he did an X-ray, which is just 1D, not a 3D or anything like a CT scan. So he didn't see anything. And he told me, oh, you probably, injured yourself working out, because I was doing like P90X stuff and some pretty extenuous things. And he was like, oh, you're getting to be 40 now. And, you probably just need to take it easy. And so that didn't set well with me. So one of the things I would say is, I know Ms. Jackson has had this experience. If it doesn't feel right or settle in your mind and in your spirit, keep pressing, because what's happened after that was one Sunday I was just at home and I wound up having shortness of breath, and went to the ER, and my family has a history of embolisms. So they decided to scan my lungs just to make sure I didn't have an embolism. And they saw the lesion on my spine. And so that's how I got diagnosed, just from going to ER for something unrelated. I just wound up being dehydrated is why I was having the issues I was having. So I was very relieved because I knew something wasn't right. And I'm just happy that I caught it when I did. So it was a small lesion. I wound up not having to do chemo again, just Foslodex and Zoladex. So it was ER/PR positive again, and we just shut off my ovaries and gave me hormonal treatment. So I was cancer-free for 5 years from that. And then June of 2019, just after I was retiring to live my best life, before I moved, I was going to the West Indies for Carnival and thinking everything's great, had problems with my jaw that they saw something at the dentist. And so I was praying that away. And then when I went for my checkup and they did the scan, nothing was wrong with my jaw, but then they saw this lesion pop up back on my spine. So I did radiation for that in December, and was cancer-free again. I'm still no evidence of disease, but right now what I'm dealing with is an adverse reaction to immunotherapy, which I will say to you ladies is very rare, a very rare thing that happens, but it happened to me. And so paralysis set in, and that was in August. So I'm on a walker right now, getting onto a cane, learning to walk again. But when this paralysis happened, I tell you, I was more involved in this process than I wanted to be. But if I was not, I don't know where I'd be today. So I was listening to the commercial for this drug today, and one of the side effects listed was death. So I'm glad I'm alive here to talk to you guys about this situation I'm in, because it could be worse. And I think it would have been worse had I not been an advocate for myself. And it was interesting because my doctor, I love her, God bless her, but while I'm sending her articles about what we need to do about this situation I'm in, she's texting to the doctor saying, oh, she's believing Dr. Google. She doesn't think she has metastasis to the spine. I'm like, I don't have metastasis to the spine. What I'm having right now is a reaction to this drug. And I knew it from the time that they gave it to me and I got home and started to feel electric kind of shocks through my legs and through my, your sacrum area. So I started to feel like something's not right here. My leg started to drag, and eventually I couldn't lift it to get into the car, out of the car, onto my bike, off of my bike. And then things started happening with incontinence and my bowels. And I'm just like, Dr. T, my doctor, I said, if I had to come see you today, I would need a wheelchair to get through the airport. And that's when she told me to get to ER. And I'm sorry, yes, I Googled, I started looking up this drug and side effects and paralysis and all of these different things. And I saw what treatment I needed. But while I was telling them what I needed, they were looking for cancer because they just thought everything that's happening to her is pointing to cancer being back in her spine. So it took a lot of me trying to say, hey, can you walk and chew gum at the same time? If I do have cancer, you can't do anything about it right now, but you can do something about this paralysis. I need steroids, I need immunoglobulin, I need plasma, one of these options. I need this now. And oh, it was just an ordeal. Every little thing I was involved in. Even when I went to the hospital, Miss Jackson, in October, they were asking me, are you a nurse? was like, no, I'm not a nurse, but I'm not about to let you guys misdiagnose me, give me the wrong drug, wait too long to give me the drug. So I would just say that it is a matter of life and death. And you really need to be, like Ms. Jackson said, knowledgeable about your disease. I don't know how you can advocate for yourself if you don't know the disease that you have and understand it, because you're going to need to ask a lot of questions. I would say also, don't think that every doctor, because they have an MD behind their name, that they know everything and that you can trust them with your life. Unfortunately, some doctors, you are a number, and you've got to figure out the doctor that is going to be your best advocate as well. You want to be a team. So if you don't feel like your doctor is the right one, if you don't have that relationship where you can talk to them about anything, it's okay to get another doctor. It's okay to get a second opinion. And a doctor should not make you feel bad about getting a second opinion either. Because I know people that have, doctors have made them feel like there's nothing else we can do, and make them feel like nobody else can do anything either because they don't know what else to do. And that's just not right. Because I've heard of people, well, they've gotten second opinions and they've been around years later after someone told them that they didn't have long to live. Go pack your bags, get your house in order, that kind of, don't pack your bags. I don't know if your bags are going to go with you, but get your affairs in order and things like that. And they're still here today. So, yeah, that's my story pretty much. I don't want to take too much time. I don't know if people have questions. I could.
Yes, they do.
So I got a lot to say.
Well, thank
That's
you.
why you're here, Carla, because I know you have a lot to say and a lot to share.
13 years. So
Thank you.
yeah, I took it as a compliment that people at the hospital thought I was a nurse, because I tell you, some hospitals, they're busy too. The nurses are going in and out through shifts. And sometimes things will slip through the cracks. So you got to know what drugs you're on, what time you're taking them, everything to make sure that you get the proper care. So, yeah.
Very good.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much, Carla, for sharing your story and for your courage, in your fight. So we've come to the time where I know most of the participants, like most, is where they can interact with the panelists and ask some questions. And we have Dr. Grace, and we have Tiffany Carter, and of course Carla Bates and Mrs. Jackson here to answer questions. If you would, I think they've asked that you send your questions to Tamika Bird and Bernadette Jackson, and they will present those questions to the panel, and then they will answer them. So do we have any questions that need to be presented to Tamika or Bernadette?
None so far, Colleen. Some have already been answered, but if you have any, ladies, gentlemen, I don't know if we have any gentlemen, come on and ask them.
There has been several compliments to both Tiffany as well as Grace for their presentation. And of course, lots of compliments for Karen Jackson. And Carla, they thank you for sharing your story. It was wonderful to hear.
So, Tamiko, can you ask the question that was answered? Because everyone doesn't know what the question was. So it'd be nice to go ahead and just ask it anyway.
Yes, Ms. Jackson, the questions were in the Q&A, and I believe they were touched upon in the last half of the presentation. Were they read before? Because I have no problem reading them again. Okay. So one question was asked, will your insurance pay for the updated genetic testing for survivors who already had testing, or must the survivor pay for it? And the response from Tiffany was depending on where you were tested and how it was done. She mentioned that Myriad Genetics can be done for free. However, if you do have private insurance, they can bill the insurance. But if they do not pay it, it is of no cost to you. And again, it would just, depend on your insurance. So that was a great question that was answered.
Yes,
and
it's good that you shared it with everyone else. Okay,
Yes,
thank you. So
yes.
here's the next one, yes.
And then the other one was a young lady who in her area is looking for more information to share about sisters and breast cancer. And so she's just looking for more information. And she was told about our website, also the YouTube channel, and that, you know, if she had some specific questions or specific things that she needed, that she could always give sisters a call and we would be happy to support her. So that was it.
If anyone ever has any questions about Sisters Network, please email us at infonet@sistersnetworkinc.org. It's the general contact button on the website rather, and we will circle back with you to provide assistance where we can or connect you with the appropriate resources. I just want to take a moment, and I know that one of our board members did take time to be on the call today, Judy Faustin. I'm not sure if any other board members are on today, but Judy, thank you if you're still on for taking time to tune in. Do any of the panelists, Dr. Grace, do you have anything you want to add to the to the discussion? Just letting people know anything else about the family knowledge or.
I just want to say I really enjoyed listening to Karen Jackson and all of her knowledge that she's gained over the years being an advocate for her membership. And then Carla, I was typing out what I was going to say to you because your story was so touching. And there's so many key points that were so important to share, especially, you know, how you need to know your disease. You have to know the ins and outs of it, because, you know, doctors do get overwhelmed. They do have a lot of patients. And so you're unique to yourself. It's important to get a second opinion too, in some cases, because you just need to know all of the different viewpoints that are out there when it comes to what you're dealing with. So I think that's so important too. And to get a doctor that you trust. But, you know, I love it when patients, I ask that question to patients sometimes too. I say, are you in the healthcare field? Because they just are on top of everything. They can pronounce all of their different medications. And a lot of times people will tell me, no, I'm not. You know, I'm on top of what's going on with me. And that's so important. So
it is.
I enjoyed
my
your time.
doctor at the time, she had her team. They have a team, they have neurologists, but they hadn't seen this before. And so she's like, I shared the studies with them. She'd go back to the, you know, board or their whole little team to discuss. But yeah, they hadn't seen these reports or studies. And I'm like, these are journals. These are legitimate things. These aren't some Google stuff. You know, I'm educated too. And that's probably shocking to them to see an educated Black woman, you know, talking to them and asking questions. I don't know,
but you got to do it.
But hello, I know how to read.
I know what I'm looking do it. And I'm never offended when a patient brings an article to me that I hadn't seen before. I say thank you. But I know sometimes some providers do feel it's like an ego thing for them. I don't know what it is.
They have
What'd you say?
That's what I'm saying. They have a little bit of ego and a little pride, you know, but it was like, it was legitimate things that they needed to read. And it was helpful. And it's, I don't know where I would have been.
Exactly. And there was another comment in the chat too about how someone received genetic testing and how we just have to advocate for ourselves or else we won't get certain services as Black women. And that is so true as well. I just wanted to share that point. It was Lynette Davis who said it. She said she took the BRCA test years ago due to family history, and we are certainly not offered without advocating for ourselves. And advocating for ourselves is so important. And you, Carla, have given specific examples of how we can do that.
Looks like we have a couple
I
of
have
questions.
a question too in here. Is that okay if I read it?
Okay.
It says, Carla being diagnosed as stage 3. How did your doctors from Morgan Mitchell? How did your doctors break it down for you? My doctors told me that stages beyond 1 and 2 are incurable. Did they essentially give you a death sentence? So when I was originally, I'll tell you something. Here's advocacy stories. I was originally, they thought it was stage 2, but they waited like a whole month to do my mastectomy, which I kind of questioned, like, it's cancer, like when you want to get it out right away. And they said it wasn't that fast growing. So by the time they did the mastectomy, they found out, and I had some swelling under my arm. And when I went to see the breast surgeon, I said, you know, my underarm is kind of swollen. Do you think there's something going on there? And she was like, no, it's probably just irritated. And I'm like, irritated with cancer? Like, you know, I was new to this. I didn't know what cancer did, but I just knew my underarm was swollen. And I'm like, this doesn't seem right. So by the time they did the mastectomy, and she said that first of all, the reason you couldn't feel it because it was shaped flat like a discus. It wasn't a little ball or pebble or anything like that. So that's why when I did my breast exam, it felt like muscle or just regular breast tissue. And then they found out it was in 14 out of 24 of my lymph nodes. So that made it stage 3A. And then they didn't say death sentence, but they did the whole 5-year thing. You know, like, oh, if you've survived 5 years without a recurrence, blah, 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 that's good. As you know, I had a 7-year recurrence, which is another reason why everyone should still be vigilant. Don't think because 5 years, you're like in the clear. Mm-hmm. You know, that's just some statistic. But they basically didn't really know because I'm young. So being 34 and breast cancer at the time was more of a postmenopausal disease. They couldn't really tell me what my outcome would be, but they just gave me that kind of 5-year thing. And then when I had metastatic cancer, they told me that people can live a long time with bone metastasis. So I felt pretty good about that. So they never really gave me the death sentence. So I'm thankful for that. I haven't had, you know, the death sentence talk, and I wouldn't really accept it anyway. I even had a lady, I do a journaling class, and she told me, you know, she introduced herself and she goes, I'm never gonna be cancer free, or I'm always gonna have cancer. And it just was so like, really? I don't talk like that. Like, I'm gonna have hope until the day I take my last breath. I'm just gonna, you know, ride this out as long as the good Lord has me here, and I'm just gonna believe. I mean, Jesus said, only believe. That's all I have to do. That's my job, only believe.
Thank you for answering that, Carla. We have a question for all of the panelists. What do you think about survivors getting one of the vaccines for COVID?
I can answer that. I had my shot about almost 8 days ago, and I already have the scheduling for my second shot, which will be the 10th of February. I wholeheartedly believe that the shot is going to help protect us from the COVID, whatever the strand is. It's all we have at this time. And as a community of Black women and our families, we looked into it as an organization with our medical advisors. And so we were advised that to pass on the information about having our membership and our community take a serious look, of course, do your due diligence, but the shot didn't hurt. I had no reaction, and I'm one of those people who have allergies. So I actually had to wait a half an hour after the shot just to see if I was going to have any symptoms from it, which I did not have any, but I had actually expected to have a reaction because that's just how my body reacts to things. But I feel confident that we all should do our own research, listen to the doctors, and also know if you don't take it, what's the alternative? So think about it.
I think there's another question in the queue from
Bernadette.
read that one.
Okay. We have a group of African-American breast cancer survivors in our area, about 15 to 23 members in the group. There is very limited resources and information offered in our area. Any suggestions and recommendations for the success of their group?
Did they give any more information as to where they're located, why there's no information in their area? Because with the web and Sisters Network can absolutely help your journey.
They're not in Tampa.
In Tampa?
In Tampa.
No, okay. It doesn't matter your location, but sometimes you're in a rural area where there's, you just can't drive to a location and ask the questions or get the information from the doctor or the nurse. So you have to go on the internet. But if you call our toll-free number, 866-781-1808, we'll be happy to walk you through some things. And if we can't answer the question, we'll help you find the answer.
In the interest of time, we have about 10 minutes and we have a wrap-up survey too. So we'll take one or two more. This person happened to be in Reading, Pennsylvania, just so that you know the location of that African-American group. And we'd be happy to talk to you a little bit further. And the president of your Tampa chapter says that she received the COVID shot too. So she just wanted you to know that.
I'm happy to hear that.
It looks like that's Melissa. So if there's any more questions, let's please present them to the panelists, and we will start putting up the the survey so that we can make sure that we get your feedback on today's webinar.
So this is the beginning of it.
Yeah.
So how do they go to the next slide?
It's open now if you would like to start.
They just go automatically, it goes to the next slide.
What next?
The poll.
Well, this is the poll. This is the second one at the end.
I know. I'm saying you
So
started
it's
at the
open, the
beginning.
poll is open. If there's any further questions, Tiffany, do you have a comment that you'd like to make?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that's ours. The
Yeah.
other one was theirs.
No,
I just want to
I
say
can read that.
so
I'm
much.
saying, so when you finish it, it scrolls up.
Jackson
When it's
talked
open,
No, they have.
and
that's what I said, it scrolls up.
Yeah.
Ms.
On
Jackson,
there.
Jackson, I'm gonna have to mute yourself or so that
Okay.
Tiffany can talk.
I love the way that Ms. Baptiste advocated for herself, and I think that is extremely important. You have an amazing story, and you're so inspiring. And you're especially so strong. Oh my goodness. And so I just was really, really touched by your story, and you were in my thoughts and prayers. And thank you so much for sharing. And I'm sure that your book is also amazing. And so keep going. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carla, can you share too, with Tiffany saying how strong, we have to let the members and the community know we're strong, but this is not 24/7. We have our moments.
Yes, we do.
And we have to stop, refresh, and put our big pink panties back on so that we can continue to be strong.
Dust ourselves off.
That's right. It's this is a struggle, but you can do it because this is what you have to do.
Yes.
And when you fall short, you could call a sister, you can show up, you can call Sisters Network. We do encourage each other. I know when I have my moments, I pick up the phone and I make calls because I know it changes your mindset by sharing what's going on with you at the time. So you're not alone if you don't want to be. We're out there for you. Carla and I talk about what's going on. We share with each other and we encourage each other.
We do, absolutely. And the other good thing about Sisters Network, I forgot to mention, and I know you did, Ms. Jackson, in your presentation, is getting aligned with the network. And like we saw today, the information that Sisters Network is sharing, this is how you get information, how you learn. And she doesn't just have us, supporting each other, but we're learning all the time how to be advocates in our neighborhood and with our friends, our family. So it's not just support, it's knowledge, because knowledge is power. Absolutely is power. And I think, as we try to close the gap on this disparity, the self-advocacy is the big piece. It is the big piece to closing the disparity gap. Is we come in armed with information, we come in with questions, and we're asking, why didn't you recommend me for genetic testing? why didn't you mention this clinical trial to me? Or how about this? Why aren't you doing this option for me? Or, we have to start asking these questions because, sometimes there is some, what do they call it, unconscious bias.
It's not so unconscious sometimes.
Conscious and unconscious bias out there that we just have to be aware of. And so, yeah.
So it looks like we have about four more minutes on the poll to be complete, and I think we're at about 40 or 50, about 50% participation. So we'd love to have 100%, ladies, if we could. And just to recap, this has been the Pink Table Talk. Know your HERstory, family knowledge is power, and how to be your best advocate. We really want to thank our panelists, Dr. Brca1 Fasaye and Tiffany Carter and Karen Jackson and Carla Bates for taking time to share the information and the wisdom and knowledge with our audience. I think it looks like Cheryl Walters wanted everyone to know that she got her vaccine as well. So ladies,
Good job.
when you have that opportunity, please try to make sure you do that. Again, we are having our Stop the Silence walk, which will be April 10th. It is virtual, so that's different for us. It's a different way of doing it, but the cause is still the same. We're raising money for the Breast Cancer Assistance Program, which helps thousands of survivors every year with utilities and rent and again, the food insecurity due to COVID. We expanded it to groceries. We hope to be reopening it up in maybe the next month or so. So we are trying to help the ladies and meet the need where the need really is. We're fortunate that Mrs. Jackson is flexible enough and our funders are flexible enough that they let us make adjustments. So please visit sistersnetworkinc.org on the web so that you can learn more about us. Carla's book is available on Amazon. It's called Dig in Your Heels, correct? Say the full title.
Dig in your heels.
Dig in Your Heels, okay. And Mrs. Jackson's book, I just went blank. The company of my sisters.
I'm gonna wait until you remember.
The company of my sisters, My Story, My Truth, both wonderful memoirs full of inspiration. Hers is available on Amazon as well, and they both have their own personal websites, which is their names, Karen EubanksJackson.com and
diginyourheels.com and carlaliving.com, but diginyourheels.com.
So we have some dynamic women who are part of this organization around the country, professional women, women who are community advocates, but most importantly, they are survivors of breast cancer, and they are thriving and living every day and an inspiration to all of us. So again, please visit sistersnetwork.org, sistersnetworkinc.org to learn more about our organizations and our chapters around the country so that you can get involved or get resources or support from the sisters in your community. And if we don't have someone in your community, let us know, shoot us an email, and we call our angels, our angel ambassadors, who we can connect you with when we don't have a specific chapter. We have tentacles everywhere. Again, thank you. And I think the poll done?
The poll is closing.
The poll is closing, and I just again want to acknowledge our Sisters Network team, of course, led by Mrs. Jackson, Shadala Jackson, who is the program manager for today, Bridget Holden, who has been handling the Facebook Live because this has been simulcast on Facebook Live, as well as Tamiko Bird and Bernadette Jackson, who handle some of the questions, and Novartis, who was our supporter for today's event. We couldn't do what we do without our generous supporters who have stood by Sisters Network for over 27 years. And we are grateful for that support. And they have some wonderful things that they're going to help us bring to you for the remainder of 2021. We're super excited. So please stay tuned. And a thank you to all of our affiliate chapters who are in here today. I see some of them: Orlando, Tampa Bay, Dallas, Chicago. I know Detroit is always in the house. Passaic, Passaic, Bergen in New Jersey.
Essex.
Essex County, and we have New York. We have Northeast Florida. I'm sorry, I forgot that one.
Our new chapter in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, welcome.
Wisconsin, and we have a couple of
Carolina.
potential chapters coming on board. But yeah, Wisconsin just was officially announced last week, and they are a dynamo group of women that are going to be lighting Wisconsin up. So anyway, and Central Virginia, oh, Regina Hall just let me know. I left Central Virginia.
I see Gwen Taylor in Arizona. Gwen, hi. And Catherine LeBlanc. I see you, Catherine.
North Carolina, Wisconsin, Central Virginia, and I hope I did not forget any other chapter. I apologize because I'm kind of going off the cuff. But they are all near and dear to us, and they are the boots on the ground that help us be who we are. And that's what differentiates Sisters Network. There are a lot of organizations out there doing a lot of good work, but what makes Sisters different and special is that we have the affiliate chapter that make the difference by being right in the community to touch and feel and to serve the women that they walk with every day as they go through their journey. So we thank them, because without them, there is no Sisters Network.
Yes. I'd like to thank the panel. Thank you, ladies. Everyone did a superb job. Colleen, thank you for being a wonderful moderator. Thank you for the team. We're all going to join together after this session and enjoy each other with our mask on, of course, as we have something delectable to eat. But thank you for all coming on a Saturday. This educational third Saturday is so important to our community. So spread the word, tell your friends, learn something, share the information. Thank you all and have a good evening. Bye.
No, we were going to check us out for Reading Pennsylvania. She said she'd love to have a chapter. Just shoot us an email from sistersnetworkinc.org and we will talk to you about that process. We'd love to have a presence there. And since you have a group of women already ready to work, let's do it. So
we can do that.
Enjoy the rest of your balance of your weekend and stay safe, most importantly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye, ladies. Bye,
Bye.
Grace. Bye, Tiffany.
Bye,
Tamiko.
have a good weekend.
Carla, wish you lived closer. You could have some lunch with us.
I know. I'm gonna have to come down.
Yes.
I can drive.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
This was wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for
Great.
organizing.
And Tiffany, we shall talk because you were wonderful. Loved it.
Thank you so much.
Yes. We all, it just worked with our little glitches, but it worked. Have a good afternoon.
All right.
ladies.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Appreciate you.
Bye.